There are things you expect to be stolen: money, cars, even mail from your mailbox. But water, who would steal water? I used to think that, until I met Karen. I live in a gated community where the Homeowners Association, controls every tiny detail, from the height of your lawn, the color of your garage door, to whether your mailbox is too vintage for the neighborhood standards. On the surface, this place looks peaceful, with neatly trimmed lawns, pristine white fences, and uniform tiled roofs. But if you live here long enough, you'll realize that peace is just a facade hiding ridiculous rules and arbitrary fees enforced by the under the rule of Maris, the woman we all call Karen. My house sits on the corner of the neighborhood, with a spacious yard and a small garden that I tend to myself. As a single father, I have no time to get involved in the neighborhood drama. I just want a simple life: go to work, come home to my two daughters, have dinner, and end the day with an animated movie together. But everything changed one afternoon when I received my water bill for the month. Holding the paper in my hands, I stared at the number printed on it, feeling as if someone had just slapped me across the face. The amount was 3 times higher than usual. I rubbed my eyes twice to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Did my daughters secretly open a water park in the backyard without telling me? I muttered, trying to figure out if anything unusual had happened that month. But no, it was just the three of us, and our water usage had always been consistent. No swimming pool, no massive vegetable garden, no logical reason for the bill to skyrocket like this. Sensing something was off, I decided to check my security camera footage. Fast forwarding through hours of nighttime recordings, my eyes suddenly stopped when I spotted a shadowy figure sneaking into my yard. My heart pounded as I zoomed in on the image. It was Karen. She glanced around suspiciously before dragging a hose from my yard to her house. Without hesitation, she turned on the tap, watering her plants, washing her patio, and even filling up her dog's small pool. I stared at the screen, unable to believe what I was seeing. She's stealing my water like it's her own damn farm. Anger flared up inside me. If it had been just once, maybe I would have let it slide. But no, I checked more footage and discovered that Karen had been doing this almost every morning. The next day, I pretended to leave for work early, but actually hid inside my house, watching from the window. 7 a.m. Right on schedule, Karen appeared. She dragged the hose again, turning on the tap with the practiced ease of someone who had done this countless times before. This time, I didn't wait. I stepped right into the yard. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. Karen jumped in surprise, turning to look at me with an awkward smile. "Oh, I was just checking if your water had a strange smell. You know, the whole neighborhood shares the same pipeline. If there's any issue, I have to report it to the Ho immediately." I crossed my arms, narrowing my eyes at her. "Oh yeah. So, did my water smell strange?" Karen hesitated for a few seconds before quickly coming up with an answer. It seemed a little chlorinated, but it's probably fine. I'll keep monitoring it for a few more days." I nodded slowly. "Good. You keep monitoring it, but I'll be monitoring you too." Karen let out an awkward chuckle, hurriedly set the bucket down, and took a step back. "Well, I have to go now. Have a nice day," she said hastily before turning away, leaving the faucet running. I stood there, watching her retreating figure. If Karen wanted to play this game, I'd let her walk right into her own trap. I sat on the cabin's porch, my eyes locked onto the silent night, broken only by the chirping of insects and the cold wind rustling through the leaves. The faint glow of distant lights wasn't enough to drive away the darkness, but I didn't need light. I knew exactly what I had to do. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my tools and quietly made my way to the cabin's main water valve, my water valve. I shut it off, cutting off my own clean water supply, then pulled out a hose connected to a special container. This container did not hold clean water. It was a masterpiece I had spent the entire day preparing. I sat down, gently shaking the container, a sly smile creeping onto my lips. Karen, you're going to love this. Inside was the ultimate blend of horror. Dishwater sludge, thick with grease, fermented food scraps, and reeking like a sun-rotted corpse. Floor drain runoff, the scent of hell itself, rising with sulfurous waves. Old fish tank water, where an unfortunate fish had recently perished, leaving behind a cloudy, foul-smelling broth. A little bit of organic fertilizer water from my plants, rich in nutrients but guaranteed to trigger a gag reflex. I stirred the mixture, wincing as the fumes made my eyes sting. This stuff might be stronger than tear gas. After ensuring everything was properly connected to the faucet system, I stepped back to check my setup. All it would take was for her to turn on the tap, and she'd be drenched in the essence of nature. I turned on a small camera, adjusting the angle to get a perfect shot. As long as Karen followed her usual habit, stealing water from my house, she was in for a huge surprise. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, made myself a cup of coffee, and pretended to get ready for work. I put on a dress shirt, grabbed my bag, and stepped outside as if I were leaving for the day. Before leaving, I glanced over at Karen's house. As expected, her curtains shifted slightly. I didn't have to see her to know she was peeking to check if I had left. I deliberately started my car, pulled out of the driveway, and slowly drove down the street. But instead of actually going to work, I turned into a small alley a few houses down, shut off the engine, and stepped out. I made my way back home through a shortcut, smoothly hopping over my backyard fence. Now, all I had to do was wait for Karen to walk straight into the trap. I hid behind a corner, eyes glued to my phone screen connected to the hidden camera. It didn't take long. Karen's door swung open. She stepped out, her eyes darting around to check if anyone was watching. Then, with a smug expression, she marched straight to my garden hose as if it belonged to her. She yanked the hose forcefully and turned the faucet on full blast. It was clear she had done this many times before. She looked far too practiced. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. The first stream of water shot out. Less than 2 seconds later, Karen's smug expression twisted into confusion, then horror. A putrid stench filled the air, spreading rapidly across the yard. The lush green leaves on the nearby bushes withered instantly, and dark stains began forming on the ground. Karen frowned and looked down at her hands. Suddenly, she let out a blood-curdling scream. Ah! What the hell is this? She stumbled back in shock, but it was too late. The brownish-yellow liquid had already splattered all over her expensive dress and designer sandals. She flailed her hands, but the more she shook them, the more the foul substance clung to her skin. At that moment, a neighbor happened to walk by. They stopped in their tracks, then immediately covered their nose. "Oh my God, Mrs. Maris, are you watering your yard with sewage?" Karen's eyes widened in horror as she choked and coughed, scrambling back toward her house. But she had underestimated the consequences of her greed. From inside her home, an even more horrified scream rang out. "Ah, the water in here smells horrible too." Even I was surprised. I couldn't believe it. Not only had she been using my water to clean her yard, but she had also connected it to her household supply. It turned out she had been stealing my water every single day. It was time for me to step in. Clearing my throat, I stepped out of my hiding spot and feigned concern. "Mrs. Maris, what's going on? Is there something wrong with my water?" Karen, now disheveled, her face flushed with a mix of rage and embarrassment, glared at me. "What did you do?" I shrugged, my tone calm. "I didn't do anything." "So, you've been using my water for free, huh?" Silence hung in the air for a few seconds, and then laughter erupted from the surrounding neighbors. Someone whispered, "Oh wow, This is karma at its finest. Karen stood frozen, reeking of an unbearable stench. She bolted inside and slammed the door shut. But it was too late. The smell would cling to her all day. I wasn't done yet. I sent the recorded footage of Karen stealing my water to the neighborhood group chat. As expected, the video spread like wildfire. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Karen was actually stealing water. This is outrageous. We all pay for our water. Why did she think she could get away with it? Where's the hoe? This needs to be dealt with. The comments flooded the screen, growing increasingly intense. Some residents even tagged the HOA directly in the post, demanding immediate action. I took a sip of coffee, the corner of my lips curling up slightly. Less than an hour later, several members of the neighborhood management board joined the discussion, confirming that they would conduct an inspection first thing in the morning. At dawn the next day, an HOA vehicle pulled up in front of Karen's house. Two uniformed employees stepped out, carrying a notebook and a folder. A middle-aged man with a name tag reading George L. rang the doorbell, while the other inspected the water meter in the front yard. Karen hesitated for a few seconds before opening the door. Seeing them, she raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms over her chest. What's this about? George spoke firmly. Mrs. Maris, we received a complaint that you have illegally connected a water line from your neighbor's house. We need to inspect it immediately. This is slander. I didn't do anything. Karen swung her arm in frustration, but there was a slight tremor in her voice. George calmly pulled out his phone, tapped on a video posted in the neighborhood group, and held it up in front of her. Would you like to watch it again? The footage is very clear. Karen's eyes widened as she stared at the screen, her face gradually turning red. She blinked rapidly, struggling to come up with an excuse. This is a misunderstanding. I was just checking the pipes. Checking? The other employee chuckled sarcastically. By installing an entirely new plastic pipe leading straight to your house? Let us conduct the inspection. If you're innocent, you have nothing to worry about. But if this video is accurate, we will issue a formal violation report. Karen hesitated for a moment before reluctantly stepping aside to let them in. It took only 15 minutes to uncover the truth. A small plastic pipe had been secretly connected to my home's water system. George nodded, pulled a citation from his pocket, signed it, and held it out to Karen. This is a clear violation, Mrs. Maris. Here's a fine of $5,000 for unauthorized water tapping. You have 1 week to pay. If not, further action will be taken. Karen snatched the paper from George's hand, gritting her teeth. This is ridiculous. I'm the president of the HOA. You can't fine me. George shrugged. You're free to contest it. But the evidence is clear, and the management board has no reason to withdraw this decision. We will be monitoring to ensure you don't repeat this violation. I crossed my arms and spoke up. And one more thing. My water has been used for free all this time. I think it's about time you paid for it. Karen spun around to glare at me. Don't push your luck. George nodded. We have checked the water bills for both properties. According to our estimates, the amount of water you have illegally used amounts to over $2,000. You will have to fully reimburse Mr. Thompson. Karen trembled with rage, but couldn't refute it. I smirked. And I'm also not sure if my water system is still clean after your filthy little stunt. HOA told me that you're responsible for fixing the consequences. I suggest you personally clean my water tank and pipes. Karen panicked. What? I'm not doing that. George spoke firmly. If you refuse, HOA has the right to require you to hire a professional cleaning service and cover all the costs. But we think doing it yourself would be much cheaper. Karen's face turned pale. I'll hire someone. No, I shook my head. I want to see you do it with my own eyes. She clenched the fine notice tightly, glaring at me. But she knew there was no way out. Karen stormed back into her house and slammed the door. But the next day, she still had to do everything herself, unable to let the penalty increase any further. From that day on, she practically disappeared from everyone's sight. No more morning walks, no more bragging chats in the yard. Every time she stepped outside, she kept her head down, avoiding the neighbors' gazes. But it wasn't that easy. Every time Karen trudged past, the coincidental remarks of the neighbors echoed right beside her. Hey, make sure to check your water meter. You never know if someone's been tapping into it. Yeah, lots of people these days like using things for free without paying. Karen heard everything, but all she could do was grit her teeth and walk away in silence. One afternoon, on my way to take out the trash, I happened to see her fumbling with her house keys. I stopped, folded my arms across my chest, and smiled knowingly. Next time you want to use my water, just say so. I'll charge you, but at least it'll be cleaner than last time. Karen froze, her grip tightening around her keys. Her eyes widened with fury, but perhaps knowing she had no comeback, she simply turned away in frustration and slammed the door in my face. I chuckled, shook my head, and walked off. My water bill had returned to normal, and Karen, she had become the laughingstock of the entire neighborhood. What do you think of how I handled it? Did Karen pay too steep a price? Leave a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch more stories like this.